Hey, everybody. JJ Cooper, Jeff Ponce, another of our Baseball America Prospect podcast. I wouldn't call it a special edition this week, but a little bit later recording time than normal because, to Jeff's credit, even though he's been traveling all day, even though he's going to be seeing different, it's a little warmer maybe where he is now than it was before, but he's still joining us for the Baseball America Prospect podcast. And we're excited to talk today because we're going to talk about some of these. We're not going to call them early overreactions. We're just going to call them some things that we've noticed already. We are 3 weeks basically into the AAA season. We're this far into the Class A and AA seasons. But Jeff, how are you doing? And as someone who I believe you may have watched more minor league baseball so far on, because you're watching 5 games at once and all on MI. Sorry, 3 games at once.
I do 3. 5 is over.
How are you doing? And, how was your minor league baseball experience where is it taking you so far this year?
I actually haven't left the house. A large reason for that is the weather in the Northeast the first few weeks in the series. I don't think there was a game that got played, a few that didn't get played, but I don't think there's been a game that got played that was above 40 degrees. And with, the convenience of modern technology and, the availability of minor league games on the MLB app on my television, I then can connect my computer, one screen to another screen. I got 3 screens. I write up a schedule every morning before a game starts, so I know who's going and when, and I kind of plan my day out around it. And usually there's like a 4-hour window between 6 and 10 where I can tune into about 12 different starters and get a good feel for 4 or 5 innings for each team, see some defensive plays, see some offensive plays, sit there with a notebook, just write down some notes. Once it warms up, I'm going to have Cape League, I'm going to have, AAA, AA, probably make some trips down to, the New York area too, to get some high A stuff. So traveling around, and we'll see, depending on how the schedule is this week with the family vacation. If Dawson Hill is going on the right day at the right time, I may take a trip down to Fort Myers overnight. It's a couple hours away, but
the Dawson Hill trip
might be worth seeing. Yeah, I was going to say it might be worth seeing. He's looked like one of the more interesting names that was kind of off the radar, we'll say, throughout not that he's in the handbook. We knew who he was, but
I mean, he's in the handbook. He's not. This is one of these things. This is a great topic to start with before we get into kind of some early season takeaways, which is, can we, as I don't think it's possible, but the definition of off the radar, when it comes to prospects, is such a wide ranging definition where you will see comments on this player who's not really noticed or whatever, and they're in the top 100. Like, okay, I'm sorry, but if you're in the top 100, you're 100% noticed. But then you have players who's like Hill, where it's like, okay, a guy who's a recent draftee who's really promising, but we want to see, just want to see him do it a little bit.
See, it's the level of baseball sicko you are. So like Carlos and Ben are listening to this podcast going, Dawson Hill that's not a sleeper. That's not off the radar. Come on, man. It wasn't on the
I really loved it when I saw him in 2022 for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's like where you are in the funnel, so to speak, right? Where the players coming in and finally dripping down to the major leagues. So that's kind of what we're dealing with.
But so you had an interesting kind of thought as we jumped into this, which is, as someone, again, who on a normal night, you're like, okay, who am I watching tonight? And we always love to talk about this. Who are the most watchable teams in the minors, right? And there are a couple of, it's always easy to point to the AAA teams. I did a top 10 most talented teams at the start of the season, and that's usually pretty AAA heavy. Like the Iowa Cubs, we'll get them a little bit later, but they have 4 top 100 when the season started, 4 top 100 prospects. Now they've had a Matt Shot of that as well, who's still prospect eligible. So that's, there's teams like that. There's the Durham Bulls, who just added Trey Morgan, to already having Carson Williams, to already having Chandler Simpson, to already having even guys who are just graduated like Joe Boyle, who just went up and shoved on Sunday. But most interesting teams are never in AAA because those are guys we kind of know about in most cases. So who's, to you, like if you said the most watchable, the most interesting team in the minors right now, who is it?
I think it's the Carolina Mudcats. I think you look at this roster. We start with Jesus Mate, right? We talked about him all off season. Tons of buzz, tons of helium coming into the year. Dealt with some injuries, but he's been hitting since. A couple of rough games to start the year, getting through some injuries and stuff. Took something off the foot. Since that point, he's been raking. I think he had 3 hits today. Got on base, had a triple. But I think you look at the rest of this roster, and it's not the most stacked pitching staff. I will say that. I think you got Bryce McCage. Josh
You did
North
better
is
that way than you did with Dasan Hill.
really. Well, what did I say?
Because you said Dasson Hill.
This Dasson Hill. And Jack Hostetler, somebody that Josh wrote about, kind of interesting. But it's not the pitching staff. It's not why we're here. I think you look at this infield in particular, but just overall, you have Braylon Payne, really exciting, high upside prospect in the outfield, first rounder. Louis Pena, right-handed bat, not quite on the tier that Jesus Mate is, but he's really produced and he's been scorching hot to begin the season. Another legitimately good prospect, a guy that was the third baseman on my breakout team this offseason, Eric Bentanti. He's really been hitting. It looks like he's taken some steps forward with the bat to ball ability. We know he has outlier impact. And then you got kind of the pop-up guy from this team, somebody that was in Josh's one of Josh's 250, 100 prospects that scouts are talking about, one of the best articles that we put out on the site every year. But I'm going to butcher this one. This is the real test, is Josh Adamczewski.
Adamczewski, I think, but yeah. Again, the frightening thing for anyone watching or listening to this, and I promise you there are some XBA staffers who've joked about my pronunciations over the years, who are looking at this and saying, if JJ is the arbitrator, the arbiter of proper pronunciations, you all are screwed.
I am from Massachusetts. I say everything wrong the first time. It's what we do.
But yes, that is a lineup. When we talk about watchable, see, this is one of the key things. As two people who watch a ton of minor league baseball, having, like, someone said, oh well, now the name of the Woo Sox. I'm just going to say the Woo Sox because I'll get that right and I won't butcher the city name. But
see, those are the words I get right.
Yes, but would say, oh well, clearly they got to be one of the most interesting teams to watch. No, not at all, not at all. Nothing against having a team that has Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony on it, but that's 2 guys in the lineup, and that's it. Like, besides that, there aren't a ton of guys who you're like, oh, I really want to see so-and-so. 2 guys in a lineup by itself is good. Not going to say I'll never tune over there, but that's not the same as what you're talking about here, where, like, we had a day game today for them where it's like your leadoff hitter, 2-hole, 3, and cleanup were all, dudes. And that's in a game that they gave, Pena the day off. You could have like your top 5 hitters where you're like, this guy followed by this guy, followed by this guy, followed by this guy. And that's what you want to see.
And I think the thing about a team like this too, is if you get a good opposing starter, especially at this level, younger guys, it's a great litmus test just in terms of seeing, like, okay, where are they at versus a lineup that's really solid 1 through 6. They might be inexperienced, but a lot of good contact guys that work the count, guys with speed, guys with power. It's kind of all of it. Righties, lefties, switch hitters. So it's a good sample size, I think, as well, just in terms of like opposing pitchers going against them.
That's to me, that is one. So I'm going to put you on the spot because you have watched even more minor league baseball so far than I am. If you were going to say who are a couple of other of the most watchable teams out there so far, I've got a couple of ideas. I'll give you one while you're thinking, sure. Which is Hillsboro. For the Hillsboro Hops, if you look at that team, that's got a good chunk. I would say that between Hillsboro and Amarillo, you've really got the vast majority of the most interesting D-backs prospects. But Crisantes, Drew Jones, like I have found myself enjoying watching Hillsboro Hops games pretty regularly. I could probably list 3 Mariners teams on that list, but at least 2.
That's where I was going to go next. I was going to say Everett is probably right up there. Because beyond the lineup, you have the pitching staff there too. So that might actually be the one that could beat Carolina if I really look at it objectively. Because you do have Shinta on that team, which that's appointment television for me.
I mean,
I made my wife watch Shinta. I was like, watch this. She was not as amazed as I thought she was going to be. She's like, well, why don't more people do that?
What? You two commenters, I see you. I just want to tell you, I've been trying to respond to some of these, but pitching is not just all about the arm. No, you can't go out and throw 99 from the right side one day and be like, 2 days later, be like, cool, here I go. I'm ready to start as a lefty, which he's not a starter as a lefty either. I know they're using him both, but no, it's not like you. If you did that, your mechanics would break down because it's like my legs don't feel fully recovered yet from what I did. My lower half is an important part of this, in my opinion. But yes, Everett, you're right. That's one that 100%. I would say another one that's I found myself being interested in for a couple of reasons. But if you look at the Akron, the Guardians AA.
Yeah, that's another good one. That's where I was going next.
The weird one about that one is, and I wrote about this a little bit for Hot Sheet, is like, I don't know what's going on there about triples. Like, most teams, minor league teams right now have like 1, 2, or 3 triples. And Bazzana has 3. Okay. Travis Bazzana has 3 triples. Okay. CJ Kayfus has 3, and they're legit, not like weird, like guy fell down, broke his leg or anything kind of triples. No, he has 3 triples already. That's a fun team with them.
Jorge Burgos on that team has 2 as well. I don't know if you realize that.
But so those are some of the teams that do kind of jump out. Like anyone else that really jumps out to you is like, man, I've just really found. I'm trying to think of someone.
Prior to the injury to McGonigal, West Michigan was definitely like appointment sort of television. I've tuned in to Cedar Rapids a lot. Interesting pitchers in the Twin system. Any Charlie Soto start so far, I've tuned in and watched.
They're a good AAA when everyone's healthy. They're a good AAA team too, because you're going to have Zebi or Fest. I know Festa's not technically a prospect, but guys like that, Erod, like there's a number of interesting guys to watch there, which is kind of, again, that's what you make out this list. I mean, he really does, guys. Everyone, he makes out a list every day, and it's like, here's the pitchers going this way. But I would say that's the other key part of a watchable, though. You really want to see, you really want to see arms, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a big part of it. You don't want to have to, jump your attention immediately to another game and just be like, I'm not even watching this half because I don't care about the other team's lineup because there's no good hitters and the pitchers, on the mound are a couple of old guys or something.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about before the early season takeaways. So, okay, I'll phrase it this way because again, we can, if you have questions, you have thoughts, we love to hear them. You can you can send us an email at askba@baseballamerica.com and we'll try to respond to some of those. But I'll throw this one out there, which I will start by saying the National League Rookie of the Year race feels pretty wide open right now when you consider that if you said who are the preseason favorites, you would say, well, Nationals Dylan Cruz has already kind of got a clear job there, and he's already got some experience in the majors, and he's ready to hit the ground running. And he has hit the ground running backwards, basically. A lot of strikeouts, no power. And then we had the news, as we're recording this, we had the news this afternoon that the Cubs have sent Matt Shaw back to AAA, as we mentioned. He's now part of that very loaded Iowa team. So, okay, I'll start by phrasing it this way because this is kind of the question that we will get, which is how much room is there to panic when it comes to Cruz and Shaw in your mind, Jeff?
I'm still at a point with both of these guys where I don't want to jump yet, This is the first time I think I've seen Matt Shaw really struggle in his career. Maybe his freshman year at Maryland, he might have had a couple of rough weeks early on. This is the first time I've ever seen Matt Shaw struggle. And he was getting on base, was scoring runs. But I had said it to Dylan on the fantasy podcast where like we have him rostered in a bunch of different teams. And like the conversation on Monday or yesterday was like, I'm not playing him this week because I don't know if he's going to get at bats. It kind of felt like maybe Gage Workman starts to sneak in some of those at bats. They had Justin Turner, I think, out there too. Just not producing enough. It's kind of a make or break season for the Cubs at this point. You know, if they can't re-sign Kyle Tucker, you know, I think they're kind of at a crossroads, especially when you look at what Cam Smith is doing down there in Houston. Started off a little rough. He's really gotten things going over the last 5 or 6 games. I think he's maybe the last 6 games, he's got 5 RBIs or something. So he's driving in runs. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So I think they're in a tough spot. And for that reason, probably better to let Shaw get at bats in AAA, work on things. The thing that I was a little surprised by, he never had crazy bat speed, but the bat speed graded out really poorly.
Incredibly low. Like
bottom.
Like Nolan Shanuel's like, before I made these improvements, I had better bat speed than this level.
Yeah, it's a bit of a concern. Like, I don't know if there were swing changes. What's going on?
I do wonder a little bit. He seemed passive when I watched.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's why he's walking so much.
Right. You did not see him, like, again, bat speed is kind of on a continuum of there's your top end bat speed of what you can do with your A swing. And then there's the fact that you can also not give your A swing very often because you're not getting to those points. But there was not much, like, yeah, it just, it makes sense in some ways to send him down to me because you need him to do something offensively other than walk. And he's not driving the ball at all. He's not unlucky. He's not hitting the ball hard and finding guys. He's just not hitting the ball hard. They're not really in a situation. The thing that does stand out with this, though, is that means that right now they kind of are looking at Justin Turner playing a good bit of third base, which would have been a great idea probably years ago, but probably not ideal at this point in Justin Turner's career. And they haven't really played Gage Workman yet, but I guess we're going to find out what Gage Workman can do. Who, by the way, I will say this, I have no concerns about Gage Workman's ability to play the position defensively. That's going to be fine. Now let's just see how much he can hit. But so what about like with Cruz? To be honest, I'm a little more worried with Cruz. Like with Shaw, I think that this is a early season struggles. Go back, hopefully take a deep breath, rework things. There are some concerns here because, again, the bat speed, the utter lack of driving the ball at all are concerns. But Dylan Cruz, we have yet to really see Dylan Cruz, pro baseball player, be the player that Dylan Cruz was for the entirety of his amateur career, in my mind.
I completely agree. And I was a little bit lower on Cruz coming into the year. I thought that he traded some impact for contact last year. He was hitting the ball hard, but the issue with him in college, when we were kind of evaluating the swing and evaluating the batted ball data, was it was a lot of oppo hard contact. That it was like, can this guy get to the point where he can pull the ball in the air hard? That's the big question. Now, I think he's tried to make some changes in that regard, and he struggled with it a little bit. I want to thank the Nationals for keeping him up long enough to graduate, so we do not have to cover him probably after this. I am more concerned. It's a longer sample size. I mean, I think you're talking just under 200 plate appearances at this point. So it is still super early. But the elite approach we saw in college, the hard contact, the speed, some of that stuff just really hasn't translated. He's been fine in the field. And he's hit the ball hard. I haven't looked at the EV data this year, but last year was hitting the ball hard. Just wasn't doing a lot with his hardest contact. And he's not like his teammate James Wood, where James Wood doesn't have to change his swing. He can't hit the ball like Aaron Judge earlier in his career 112 miles an hour out to the opposite field at a low launch angle, and it still might travel, out for a homer. And I think that's what the big difference is between the two.
If you look at like his average EV this year is 88.1, which isn't great, but his max so far this year is 111, which is fine. No concerns there at all. Bat speed's fine. Still can run, but it's contact. I mean, like, the things about it is there's parts here where you're like, I kind of think that I said this, we did a playback, altcast of the Nationals Pirates game last night. And again, you see how these things do work in some ways. Like, Cruz there was a 3-1 count in like the 7th inning and pitched just off the plate. And of course, with the way Cruz's season's going, instead of it being ball 4, it's called strike 2. Next pitch, swinging strike, chases, strike 3, sit down. But there's been too many strikeouts. Like, I do think at this point, he needs to first right now focus on being the contact hitter who can hit for average, get on base, be a complimentary player, because I feel like maybe it's because he's chasing more impact, but we're not getting any of it right now. And if you said, like, you and I both have kind of always been a little bit of I would say, Cruz skeptics in some ways. Not that we don't think he's good, but we just thought, I think we said on one of these podcasts in the offseason, I think, I used an Adam Eaton comp of what I hoped he could be. And I meant that from a standpoint of, like, can play center, provide value there, but really is probably better in a corner and above average corner defensively, can run, can get on base, can hit for average. Just don't expect a ton of power with it. Man, right now, just get back to hitting for average and getting on base would be a big step. It, like you said, the thing that is, I think, really kind of a little bit more concerning here is he was young for the level, but if you look back at last year, at best you can say he was a slightly above average hitter in the minors, and you're expecting well above average hitter in the minors. And we are now talking about 185 big league plate appearances, and he's a 189, 254, 284 hitter in the majors. That's not, like in Matt Shaw's case, we are talking, it's not 70 plate appearances yet. This is not a nearly that small of a chunk. This is enough now where you're going to, it's a third of a season, basically, almost.
And he also didn't get a taste like Cruz did before the offseason, and then was able to kind of internalize that and focus on certain elements in training because he's seen it. He's seen major league pitching, over the course of a decent sample size. That's another part of it too, is it's more concerning because you were like, I was hoping that he'd take another step forward this offseason and would really be ready,
It's hard to have a 120 slugging percentage in 14 games. That's concerning. So, okay, let's switch to something that's a little bit of a happier topic, which is one of the guys that really did jump out to you when we talk about exciting guys to watch. I feel like right now, Jeff, like there's a lot of pitchers that you're like, ooh, I want to watch this guy tonight. But there's one in particular that, it kind of popped a little bit in spring training, but now is kind of on the must watch list, isn't he?
Yeah, Brandon Clark from the Red Sox looked phenomenal this week. And I watched it live. I was able to get some data as well following the start. And then Josh Norris got some really good feedback from a scout and I love this one. I have to share this one, JJ. So this is he looked like a young Ricky Tiedemann. And I was like, oh, so what all ball knowers describe great pitchers as is a young Ricky Tiedemann. But it's major stuff. The Red Sox did a great scouting job of getting this guy in the 5th round. Sitting 97 miles an hour. He hit 100. It's more of a sinker. Not a lot of ride on it. It doesn't have a ton of sink. It's more of like 2-seam action. Say it's more of like a horizontal breaking fastball, kind of along those lines, which works, especially when you're throwing as hard as he does, as consistently as he does. And last week, 69% strike rate with a fastball. 85% strike rate with the slider. The slider's a really good pitch. It sits 88 to 89. It touched 91 miles an hour. It averages 10 to 11 inches of sweep at that. It's a sweeper in the high 80s, low 90s. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, honestly, with that velocity and break, and then the fact that he landed it consistently. And throughout this start, JJ, he was back footing it to righties, a lefty. He was back footing it to righties, front door, back door to righties. I mean, he was really commanding the slider, and it's not easy to do that when it moves that much and it's that hard of a pitch. It's rare to see that. Mixed in a couple of like low 80s curveballs that are like 2-plane depth. No changeups in that start, but the fastball is really, really interesting. He throws everything super hard, and the strikes look good, which as an amateur, just reading the reports, talking to some folks, talking to Carlos, others, that was kind of the knock. That was the rub, is like, it's great stuff, but can you get it over the plate? He's been getting it over the plate. Spring breakout, he had 2 innings. The first one they pulled him from, put somebody else in because he was struggling a little bit. But then when they put him back in, he just took off. And like that second inning was great.
I remember talking to y'all.
and
I
that's
was in
kind of what we
Arizona. I
saw.
remember talking to y'all about that.
Yeah, it's kind of what we saw in that start. I mean, he's a really interesting name.
And
it's Salem, so it's low A, but we'll see how it projects up and treks up. But it's really interesting stuff, and I think a name you can kind of get in on the ground floor. Red Sox system, man, it's loaded.
The next batter who reaches against him this year will be the first. Now he's only faced 12, but 12 up, 12 down and 40 pitches, 30 strikes is very impressive so far. So it's a little bit of a shorter version today. We are doing this a little later, and we have a quick turnaround because we do want to make sure we get this up for you every Wednesday. But we do have our prospect soapboxes, and when we do this every week, it's someone we're going to talk about, a non-top 100 prospect who is intriguing us in some way. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to say, like when I did Chandler Simpson, I would say that everyone on the BA staff was like, well, of course he did Chandler Simpson. Chandler Simpson fascinates me to no end. This week, when I tell everyone on the staff who I'm doing, for this, they're going to be like, wait, who? JJ did that? Because I'm going to talk about 2 Diamondbacks prospects, but I want to start with Drew Jones. And I want to start with him because I want to give him a lot of credit. Like, I'm not saying that the swing looks entirely different, anything like that. But I know, Jeff, that you've also watched. I think I've watched every ball televised that Drew Jones has put in play as a pro. I do think that I can safely say that. Thank you, Synergy Sports, for the ability to do that. And the thing is even when he's had hot streaks before, right? I remember having a conversation at the end of the 23 season where it's like, look, he had this hot streak the final week of the season. And I went in and looked at it and I was like, yeah, that was an infield single that should have been an out. That was a ball that like hit off the pitcher. That was a ball that found a hole. There's nothing where he was driving the ball here. And when you say like last year, it's like, okay, he had his moments, but it's like a lot of infield, a lot of grounders that got through the infield. Every now and then, like a line drive down the right field line. He's a right-handed hitter. Just want to see, as you go up the levels, you've got to be able to turn on a ball. You've got to be able to pull the ball in the air at times. And I do not want to make it sound like that he's become Isaac Paredes or anything. Like, like if you took Paredes' spray chart and you put Drew Jones' spray chart side by side, there would be no overlap. I think that Paredes is like furthest over hit and Drew Jones is furthest hit on a pull side. They would be like, nope, Paredes is still his furthest going oppo is not reaching Drew Jones's, furthest pulled hit. But you're seeing line drives into the gap. You're seeing driving the ball a little bit more. Always been able to run, always been able to play defense. Always had a decent idea of the strike zone. I want to give credit. Like I've written about the struggles in the past. I want to acknowledge when a guy's doing things better. And Drew Jones, it's early. It's a short small sample size, all that. But I want to. You watched it too. But I've got a second D-backs guy, but you've watched him too, Jeff. What are you seeing?
He just looks way more comfortable in the box. I'm still a little questionable if we'll ever see the high school graded impacts. Like, I don't think there's 60 power here. I look at the body, I don't see that. Look at the swing, I don't see that. But I saw him do something good against Shinta the other day. Pitched him on the inside, kind of kept the hands in, just, took the ball right up the middle. Hard ground ball right up the middle. Probably was like 100, 101, something like that. So, scorched through the infield. Nice little single. Seen a couple of at-bats like that, just him doing hitterish type of stuff where a year ago, I feel like his ability to adjust inside versus outside, up versus down was a struggle, even more so 2 years ago. So, I think we're seeing progression like that against high A pitching, against quality college pitchers too, that's a good sign.
Other one I want to bring up is Tommy Troy had a much rougher season last year than Drew Jones. Higher, and again, you're also talking about a guy who was another first round pick, but a guy who was a college guy. So you would expect that he would be better than he was last year. It was a bad year. There's no other way to put it. Again, I don't want to in any way say like, hey, every concern that we had last year is wiped away by what he's done in the first couple of weeks. It's an oppo approach, in a different way than Drew Jones, but it's a very oppo heavy approach. But what I would say with that though is a lot of line drives, hitting, just again, seems like better at bats. Like you're seeing more of what he looked like in college. You've seen Tommy Troy, I would say, Jeff, for probably a pretty long time at this point. What have you, because you've also watched this, what have you seen?
Yeah, I just think there's more confidence there. He's doing a better job of covering the plate. I'd have to take a look at the swings year over year and see if his setup changed a little bit. I felt like he was really giving away the outer half of the plate. I saw the same thing during the Arizona Fall League. And there's a lot of hitters like this where they'll have success in college. Some of them will have success in the lower levels just by kind of cutting the plate in half and only working sort of middle in. And you kind of can't be like that nowadays. I feel like the attack plans in the minors, the amount of stuff you're going to see, guys kind of
in the minors, their scouting reports.
Yeah, and guys are picking it up during the start. Catchers are picking that stuff up. Pitchers are picking that stuff up. Of like, this guy doesn't swing at anything you throw in the outer half. So that puts him at a huge disadvantage. He's been less passive this year, a little bit more aggressive. I think the timing is better. He's not in between like he was a lot last year, where kind of caught between the fastball and the off speed. It seems like he's a little bit more, on time with the fastball and, kind of catching the break and stuff and changeups, et cetera, out front, which is really what you want.
I will say one caveat with this. Again, we're praising, but also just sharing what we see. Defensively, it's been rough at second base so far. He had a 3-error game, which he had one ball early where he went up the middle. That was a tough play. I mean, with the way that errors are now judged, I was surprised that one was called an error, because now if there's any possibility that it could be a hit, I feel like it's generally ruled a hit. So that was a tough one. Then later in that game, though, he had another ball that was definitely he could have fielded it, kind of hit off the glove. He goes over, he picks it up. He's not going to throw the guy out at this point. Tries anyway, throws it about 15 feet over the first baseman's head. And you're like, okay, that was not a great play. Another play that Jeff and I both watched where first baseman misses the ball on a very easy field. It's high A. So a very easily done play. E3 right there. But to Troy's credit, he gets to it. And at that point, he should just take the ball and put it in his back pocket and go, hey, I kept it in the infield. But instead, he decides to flip it. And he doesn't flip it to the first base. He just kind of flips it. And that's an error. So that's the second error on the play. There's been a couple plays like that where, defensively, there's a little bit cleanup. I think 5 errors so far, very early in the season, 907 fielding percentage. But again, we're not here to bury Tommy Troy. We're here to praise him. Him and Drew Jones, both I would highlight as guys who I'm encouraged by what I've seen so far as, again, an early part of the season. So Jeff, what about you?
Well,
You've got one that I would say that that when you say, oh, Jeff's prospect soapbox, this is more like me and Chandler Simpson, where you'd be like, oh yeah, he's going to talk about him.
Yeah, so I'm picking off the left for dead pile as well. That's Griff McGarry of the Phillies. I swore to myself this offseason, spring training, he was pitching the backfield. I didn't even go see him. I was like, you know what? I'm staying at this game. I'm not walking across. I don't need to see that. I don't need to get sucked back in.
Too many times before.
I've been burned too many times in McGarry. I kept the candle burning. Last year was tough. Dealt with some injuries. Might have been a little bit of the disgraceful list as well, where he wasn't throwing strikes at all. I mean, it was atrocious in AAA last year as a reliever. But the thing with McGarry that always brings me back is it's outlier stuff. There aren't many guys that throw as many quality pitches as McGarry does, movement profiles, the release characteristics. There's a lot of stuff to like about McGarry. It's the strikes. If he's throwing strikes and he's competing, I'm in. Well, so far, you wrote about this today. To start the season, he's thrown a hidden no-hitter. What is that? That is when you have faced 27 consecutive batters without allowing a hit. It's across 2 starts. He's back down in AA. Not going to hold that against him. But starting,
I don't call this a hidden no-hitter. I disagree with this. I didn't write that today.
Okay.
He's thrown 8 innings.
Yeah, that's part of it, right? It's
one more inning and it's a hidden no-hitter. You got to throw 9.
That's true. It's true because it wasn't perfect. He did walk 3 batters across the 8 innings. Okay. So there you go. Fine. I'm okay correcting that. I saw it I wanted to use it because it was in the prospect report. Hasn't allowed a run yet. He's only walked 3 batters across 8 innings. For like Griff McGarry to walk 3 batters across 8 innings. I mean, it would be like George Kirby going 5 starts without walking anybody. Like, it's just so rare. Strikeouts have been there. Hasn't been giving up hits. His first start of the year against Portland, he actually didn't walk a batter. I don't know if I've ever seen Griff McGarry do that before in any way, shape, or form. So, that being said, I'm not totally back in, but I'm interested. My interest is peaked once again with Griff McGarry. He's 25, was left off the 40-man roster, was left unselected in the Rule 5 draft this year. So, he kind of hit rock bottom in some circumstances. But I think the stuff is still there. If he's throwing strikes and get deeper into starts, I think there's still something there. I don't want to completely write it off. He's the kind of guy where if he finds it at 27, 25, 26, 27, he could have a nice run for 5 or 6 years. It's just a matter of, can he get to fringe average command consistently over the course of a season and stay healthy? And that's still a big question.
42 starts in his career, 3 times before this where he went more than an inning in a start without a walk. So it is very rare. It has happened, but it's very rare. He's a different kind of pitcher. I don't want to compare these two this much, but I will say, like, along those lines, when you say, well, look at his control and all that, go look at Joe Boyle. Like, Joe Boyle shoved this past weekend, and Joe Boyle, I think some of his college resume is like 25 innings, because I think Joe Boyle threw more innings as like in the Cape than he did in college, because he just kept getting pulled because of his wildness. And then you look early in his, like, I've wrote about this when he was with Reds so many times, like, no one ever hit him, but he would also walk a ton of guys. When guys have special traits, there are reasons to keep trying and give them more chances, because if they figure it out, this is one of those things that's kind of like, I think Jeff and I both share. The guys who can get swings and misses, and they need to improve their control and command, especially the guys who can throw hard and do that, give them more chances, because you know what? Those guys actually, more of those turn out than the guys who, I know that there are so many fans who want to talk about this magician who throws 88 to 90 and just puts it right on the edge of the plate. Those guys, the success stories of like, hey, that guy was always underappreciated. Look at what he turned out to. There aren't many of those stories. I can list a ton of stories of guys who's like, He walked everybody on, in the dugout for 4 years, and then something clicked. And by the way, now he can get outs.
It's Glasnow. I mean, that was Tyler Glasnow for a bit. I mean, he was out there in the wilderness. That's why, man, I was hoping that the Rays would make a play at Griff McGarry. He seems like perfect. The Joe Boyle thing, Glasnow, it seems like he's a good fit, but
The funniest thing about this, when we talk about like the unknown, we talked about the start. It's a perfect way to put a bow on this, this episode of the Prospect Podcast, which is when we talk about the guys who are underappreciated, unknown sleepers and all that. I follow some, like I saw some commenting, right before that Rays Brave game on Sunday, where it's like, Braves got a big, break here. Shane Boss has been pushed back by a day. They're getting to face Joe Boyle today. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've seen Joe Boyle pitch twice this year so far. That is not a break in any way, shape, or form. And then Joe Boyle goes out there. It's like, here's 99. Here's this, utter, like, just nightmare of a breaking ball. Like, here you go. See what you're going to do. And then the thing to Boyle's credit is usually he's always had that inning where it's like, okay, all of a sudden he loses a little bit. It's just 3 up, 3 down, 3 up, 3 down, 3. Oh, okay, this inning, it all falls apart. And I give the Rays credit. They did that. It was the 6th, I believe, if I remember right. And they're like, started to happen. They're like, out you go. You're getting we're not going to let you stay out here for that. You've given us everything we could hope for and again, the subtle things about rosters and all. Why did the Rays make that move? They wanted a starter who was optionable. That's something where Joe Boyle can kind of go back up and forth doing that this year as they needed him to. But Absolutely. Jeff is going to hopefully get to see, again, maybe see Dasan Hill at some point this week. Who knows? But we will be back next week with another of our Baseball America Prospect podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, we're glad to thank you for that. If you're on podcast, again, if you could and leave a review on your favorite podcast provider, that always helps other people find this. And obviously check out all the great stuff we have at baseballamerica.com. There's so much this week. I don't think I've gotten the chance to read everything that we have at baseballamerica.com this week.
It's been a lot.
Yes, it's been a lot. So we hope you enjoy this. And for Jeff, I'm JJ. So long, everybody.